Dr. Sharma VSN Rachakunda, MD, FCCP, FRCP, Emeritus Professor Cardiology, Rajiv Gandhi Institute, Srikakulam, Adjunct Professor, Tamil Nadu Medical University, Honorary National Professor of Medicine, IMA, CGP, Ex-Secretary, American College of Physicians, MRCP online faculty, Consultant Physician of Internal Medicine, Manipal Hospital. Teaching activities, Dr. Sharma's CME group is a very famous group where he has a lot of members. He's got a lot of fan following. He's also got a CME for PCR Cardiometabolic Forum. He's a host. He hosts his own YouTube channel, has conducted many mega scientific programs like the ECG workshop, medical research methodology workshops, using computers in clinical practice. I still remember we had one session in Bloom Hospital where a lot of participants were there and how to effectively use computers in medical practice. He is reputed for his excellent clinical skills and pleasing bedside manners. We have heard Dr. Sharma many a times, but we are looking forward to hearing from him on syncope, which is a very common symptom in medical practice. Over to you, Dr. Sharma.
Thank you, Dr. Kailash, for inviting me to talk on a very interesting topic. This is a forum wherein I am very familiar to everyone, and it goes without saying that we have been doing this for a long while. And last time we had a discussion on what is called the vertigo, and an allied symptom, almost similar one, is the syncope. And how we try to understand this will be the presentation of today. I request all the participants to mute their videos. We don't require any video during the presentation. Please mute all the videos. Again, when the talk is over, when you want to discuss, you can come on the videos. Please mute your videos. Some of you can do that if you want. I request all the participants to mute audio also. Already the panelists have muted their audio. And Dr. Ramurthy, please mute the video. Fine, excellent. Now you can go ahead with the talk. So the first slide is about the syncope. This is now usually we in Indian, South Indians particularly pronounce this as syncope, like that, not syncope. It is called syncope, 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 derived from the word syncoptian. Syncoptian means totally cut off. Optian, cut off, syncoptian, totally cut off, from a Greek word. So we have to pronounce it as syncope, syncope. Okay, it's not syncope. Syncope is not the correct terminology, the correct pronunciation. Syncope is a common symptom, often with dramatic consequences. In majority of the cases, it is benign, but in some cases, it is fatal. The idea of the CME is to decide which is the benign one and which is the fatal one. So this deserves thorough evaluation and appropriate management of the cause. There can be few competent physicians who do not experience slight syncope if their patient's complaint is giddiness. Isn't it very beautiful? So if my patient says syncope and I must be really feeling lightly giddy or difficult to evaluate, that should be the thing. That, so to say that it is very. These two videos that follow are the ones which will clearly demonstrate how it happens. Transient loss of consciousness. So the difference between transient loss of consciousness and death is, in the first one we get up in the syncope, but in the death we don't get up. That's the only thing that they're talking. Okay, fine. Now, how do I go about it? The first question is there loss of consciousness or not? If the loss of consciousness is there, then it is syncope. There is no loss of consciousness. Is there any fall? Is there any altered consciousness? You ask. If there is loss of consciousness, is it transient or prolonged or permanent? If it is transient only, we are interested to think about syncope. Otherwise, it is coma or aborted sudden cardiac death or any other cause could be the prolonged loss of consciousness. If it is transient loss of consciousness, is it associated with trauma or is it non-traumatic? Suppose I go and dash against a wall unknowingly. I suddenly feel syncope and thrown to the ground. That is traumatic. Many instances we see when people do not really understand, see the glass doors, because glass doors sometimes are very transparent. They try to walk through the glass and bounce themselves onto the glass, and they injure their forehead. They may have some cut also. Then they become traumatic and then syncope. Non-traumatic syncope can be, non-traumatic loss of consciousness can be transient loss, can be epileptic seizure, can be psychogenic, and rarer causes. And of course, the common one is the syncope. Now, syncope, vertigo, and gait ataxia almost are having similar presentation. Gait ataxia is more a sensory motor problem of the CNS. Vertigo we looked at last time, central causes, peripheral causes, oral causes, ophthalmic causes, and all that. And today we are going to look at syncope. So, disorders mimicking syncope and syncope proper. Naturally mediated reflex syndromes are in syncope. Orthostatic hypotension. What is this? Postural hypotension. Cardiac arrhythmias and sudden and structural heart disease, SHD. So 4 different categories: neurally mediated, orthostatic, cardiac, and structural heart disease. Somebody has got a mitral stenosis, aortic stenosis, producing a syncope, particularly commonly with aortic stenosis, or sometimes congenital heart disease also. Disorders mimicking the syncope, loss of consciousness may be there, seizure disorders may be there, and then there may be also cerebral concussion and loss of consciousness and without loss of consciousness, and psychogenic or pseudosyncope. Now let us go further. The most important point that all of us have to remember is what is printed in red here. Spontaneous, complete, and prompt recovery, just as you will see in the videos. Underlying mechanism is transient global cerebral hypoperfusion. These words explain the whole story. It is transient. That means the patient gets back to consciousness immediately. It is global hypoperfusion. The entire cerebral hemisphere is devoid of blood supply suddenly, and then it is cerebral hypoperfusion. That is why the loss of consciousness. Transient global cerebral hypoperfusion. Beware of less specific symptoms also. These less specific symptoms can be loss of consciousness and postural tone, self-limited, relatively rapid in onset, variable warning signs and symptoms called pre-syncope, and they may have other causative issues also. Now, this is a little the understanding about the autonomic nervous system. There is high pressure mechanoreceptors and low pressure mechanoreceptors in the hypothalamus. Gravitational shift. Once we stand, there could be a difference of more than 1000 ml of blood in the circulating blood. So normally around 5 liters of blood is there. During gravitational shift, what happens is we may have only 4 liters circulating, and that reduces the capillary, increases the capillary pressure, filtration pressure, reduces the venous return to the heart, decreases the filling pressure and systolic volume and cardiac output. Vasoconstriction to keep the tone, neuroendocrine checks will occur, skeletal muscle pump, respiratory pump activity, syncope, and then loss of postural tone. So here, most important thing is we have 2 hearts. One heart is within your chest, which is called the functional heart. Normally, every one of us know. The second heart is the muscle pump. So whenever we stand, the muscles, if the muscle tone is good, the muscles pump when we're walking and standing, and the blood is circulated upward. See, the heart has to pump mostly from through the aorta down and also to the brain, but the muscle pump has to pump all the way into the heart, and that is why the bipeds, we human beings, are at a disadvantage as far as the circulation is concerned. Now, the cerebral cortex is there. In the cerebral cortex and in the hypothalamus, the baroreceptors in the body, in the carotid sinus and aortic arch receptors, they are the ones which keep the postural tone. So there are two mechanisms by which the impulses come back or return, or the outgoing impulses are sympathetic impulses and the parasympathetic impulses. Sympathetic impulses will increase the vascular tone and also they will increase the heart rate. Parasympathetic impulses reduce the heart rate, reduce the AV conduction, and they produce vasodilation. A balance is made between vasoconstrictor and vasodilator and the bradycardia and the tachycardia. So we all have that 70 to 100 heart rate and the blood pressure of 120, 80, around that is maintained because of the baroreceptors and also the control of the cerebral cortex. So this is normally is the basic pathophysiology. Now you see this circle, there are four colors are there. The light blue, the majority of it is dirty green color, and then the buff colored. The buff colored is the reflex syncope. This is called vasodepressor syncope or mixed syncope, and then cardio-inhibitory inappropriate reflexes. That is, the reflexes are not able to maintain the circulation because of vasodepressor or due to medicines or due to cardio-inhibitory stimuli. And the second one, of course, is the cardiac syncope, where there is an arrhythmia or there is a structural heart disease or the other causes in the heart, and this is called cardiac type of this one. So the next one, of course, the light greenish color or the dirty greenish color is the one which is the secondary to orthostatic hypotension. Can be due to ANS, autonomic nervous system, primary ANF failure, structural damage to ANS, secondary, and mostly the autonomic nervous system is affected by the drugs. So, for example, I am taking antihypertensive drugs, particularly the alpha blockers. They are notorious to cause postural hypotension. So the patient stands and suddenly feels giddy and thrown to the ground because of the drop of blood pressure. What is postural hypotension? A difference of more than 20 millimeters between the standing and the lying down is the postural hypotension. Inadequate venous return because of volume depletion. Somebody is having diarrhea, there is volume depletion, he is running high fever, or there is venous pooling due to various reasons. This is the inadequate return. So let us go into those details. So what is the reported frequency? Less than 18 years, it is 15%. Military populations around the middle age, 20 to 25. Individuals who are more than 40 to 59, around 20%, and above 70 is around 23%. More or less, the age distribution is similar. But only difference is the causes are different in the younger compared to the old. Okay. The significance of syncope is some causes of syncope are potentially fatal. That is the reason we are here. We wanted to discuss which are those fatal conditions. Cardiac causes of syncope have a highest mortality rate, a recurrence of about 34% in the 3-year follow. Overall syncope mortality is around 5%. Okay. Now, overall syncope mortality is around 5 to 8%, but the one due to cardiac causes is around 25%, which means 5 times the average syncope mortality is in the people who have heart disease, either structural cardiac disease or cardiogenic shock or cardiac failure or due to autonomic failure or arrhythmias or any of the cardiac causes. So one has to exclude the cardiac causes if there is history of syncope in a patient. So you can see these curves here. These are called the Kaplan-Meier curves. They look a little very sort of complicated, but very simple. The person who does not have syncope is the black line. So the mortality is the lowest in them. The person who had the cardiac is the red line. They have the highest. Person who have neurological one is the light blue. Green color is people of unknown cause. And then vasovagal causes are the brown causes. So the yellow or the orange color is almost same as no syncope. Means the vasovagal syncope is benign, whereas the cardiac syncope is rather dangerous. Kaplan-Meier curves, low mortality versus high mortality, neurally mediated syncope versus the syncope with the structural heart disease or due to the cardiac causes. Only one point out of these 2 slides. There are two categories. One is called the benign one, the other is called the dangerous one. The fatal one are the cardiac causes. Now, this very clearly shows the cumulative mortality after 24 months in patients who survived a history of syncope are 40% in elderly cardiac syncope. So that is, you see the red line, and the green line is the young cardiac syncope. Whether young or old, cardiac syncope is cardiac syncope, and that is going to play a very important role in the mortality, not morbidity. They're going to die into 2 years, around 30 to 40% of them. Cardiac syncope, either elderly or the old, all the young people. Whereas non-cardiac elderly people have around 20% mortality. This is from a structured study. That's what I'm speaking here. And then the young non-cardiac syncope is of the order of around 4 to 5%. So the two important factors decide what is the age of the patient. Does he have a cardiac underlying cause? If the age of the patient is elderly, the chances of morbidity and mortality are higher, as well as if the cause is cardiac, either young or old, the mortality is going to be higher. Now, impact of syncope on the quality of life. Syncope certainly throws a lot of anxiety in the mind of the patient, because he always feels when that giddiness will come, when he will have a syncopal attack, when he will fall to the ground, always the anxiety and difficulty in concentration and depression can occur. Altered daily activity. Suppose he is a driver. If he is getting syncopal attacks frequently, you can imagine how he feels about that. Restricted driving abilities. Altered, suppose somebody is working with machinery, somebody is working with dangerous substances, then they don't want to have this syncopal attack and then fall into the chemicals or into the environment there. And sometimes it may associate change in the environment. So that is why this, though it appears to be a trivial symptom, it could even impact the quality of life. Up to 73% had depression, around 37% had change in employment, and things like that, the percent of patients. So this again throws an important point that it should be taken care of. Now, the first probably and the only question in this particular topic is my patient suffering from benign syncope, or is he suffering from serious disorder? Then we need to reconstruct the story, and then we will be able to decipher what we are dealing. So look at this. Non-cardiac causes, the mortality is 2%. Cardiac causes 20 to 40%. Unknown causes 6%. The mortality, 1 year mortality is as high as 20 to 40% in cardiac causes. So this is the reason we require to know about that. So as we know here, that the types are neural reflex syncope is the commonest type. That's why it is standing out prominent. Non-CVS causes, arrhythmias, structural heart disease like a aortic stenosis or a valvular involvement or mitral regurgitation, mitral stenosis, aortic regurgitation, prominent among them being the aortic stenosis. And orthostatic hypotension, postural hypotension, and whatever you investigate, there will be a group of people whom will not be able to know what is the cause of this particular episode or disorder, and they are classified as unknown. So what are the things I have? Neural reflex syncope, also called the vasovagal syncope, which is the commonest. Non-CVS causes like drugs and other things, and autonomic neuropathy, diabetes and other things. Arrhythmia, structural heart disease, and then pulmonary hypertension. Orthostatic hypotension, either due to autonomic nervous system failure or due to drugs, and unknown causes. So they are again listed here in a vertical manner. Neurally mediated vasovagal syncope, carotid sinus syncope, cough syncope, micturition syncope, and situational syncopes are 24%. So during micturition, elderly people with prostate and then difficulty in initiating, they try to strain. When they strain, the parasympathetic tone goes up, and that results in sudden syncopal attack. That is what is called the micturition syncope. Similar is the cough syncope. Orthostatic, mainly drugs, or autonomic failure, either primary autonomic failure, secondary due to diabetes, or so many other conditions. Around 1/4 are the neurally mediated, 11% are orthostatic. Cardiac arrhythmias, bradycardia is more dangerous than tachyarrhythmias. Bradyarrhythmias like 6NH syndrome, AV block, heart rate less than 50, 40, they will definitely have syncopal attack because the cardiac output is a product of heart rate into the stroke volume. If the heart rate comes down, cardiac output comes down. When the cardiac output comes down, brain receives less blood. That results in transient global cerebral hypoperfusion, which is called the syncope. Structural heart disease, structural lung disease like aortic stenosis, obstructive cardiomyopathy, pulmonary hypertension, they contribute a relatively small proportion, 4%. Non-CVS causes like psychogenic, metabolic, hyperventilation, neurological causes around 12%. Unknown causes remaining 35% are the unknown category. So let us see each one of them, one by one. So disorders of the vascular tone and blood volume. That is the vasovagal, vasodepressor or neurogenic. If you say cardio here, you may get mistaken. Call it as neurogenic. Neurogenic, vasodepressor, vasovagal. Postural hypotension, orthostatic hypotension, drug-induced, especially antihypertensives, particularly alpha blockers, particularly the first dose hypertension with ACE inhibitors and ARBs, peripheral neuropathy due to alcoholic or diabetic, idiopathic postural hypotension could be the postural causes. Cardiac carotid sinus hypersensitivity and anemia. For example, a patient is grossly anemic, say 5 grams or 6 grams, the cardiac output may be there, but the quality of blood is so poor that the brain is not getting enough oxygen. That results in transient global cerebral hypoperfusion. And situational like cough, micturition, Valsalva maneuver, that is breathing against a closed glottis, or any sudden bleed, hemorrhage, or some people when they see blood, immediately they get syncopal attack. Some people when the blood is being taken from the forearm, when they see their own blood, these are situational syncopes. And glossopharyngeal and trigeminal neuralgias can be so irritating. The glossopharyngeal neuralgia and the trigeminal neuralgia can trigger sort of vascular tone fall, and that results in the vasovagal type of syncope. So vasovagal, vasodepressor, postural hypotension, which is drug-induced, peripheral neuropathy, idiopathic postural hypotension, carotid sinus hypersensitivity, and some people have very hypersensitive carotid sinus, and severe anemia in our country is a very important cause. Aortic stenosis and anemia are some of the common causes. Situational, cough, micturition, Valsalva, unfamiliar procedures, bleed, any painful procedure done on the body. Suppose somebody wants to undergo endoscope. So now suddenly, there will be little pain while introducing the endoscope, and they may feel syncope. That's why people who are nervous, they give a short sedation and do it. Glossopharyngeal, trigeminal neuralgia. Okay, sometimes, the dentist office also, when the dental people want to do some dental work, whatever anesthesia they give, it may not be sufficient, and the pain may trigger syncope. Okay. Cardiovascular disorders, already we have seen. Bradyarrhythmias are more important, AV blocks are more important, tachycardias, atrial fibrillation, flutter, ventricular tachycardia, other cardiopulmonary causes like pulmonary embolism, pulmonary hypertension, massive myocardial infarction can also reduce the cardiac output and can throw the patient onto the ground. Falling on the ground is a preventive mechanism because there is hyperperfusion of the brain. The body tries to put the patient on the ground so that there is a sort of horizontal position is assumed automatically and the blood circulation returns. He gets up and walks. So restriction or constriction of the LV, left ventricular outflow, either by aortic stenosis or aortic valve disease or HOCM, hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, are the cardiovascular causes. So we have the vasovagal, orthostatic, and then the cardiovascular. Among the arrhythmias, several are there which are beyond the scope of a general practitioner. I just listed them here. The torsidy pontus, I'll show the ECG. Long QT syndrome is another thing, and you may be worried nowadays on this hydroxychloroquine. This prolongs the QT interval. And people who have already long QT, they should not be given hydroxychloroquine. Likewise, all your prokinetic drugs like your domperidone, your etiyopride or levosupride, which you give along with your PPEs, please avoid them without indication. Don't give, and don't give them in morning and evening like that, because it could precipitate long QT the interval and then end up in syncope and other heart problems or heart block also. Orthostatic hypotension, anemia is an important cause. So what do I examine? I examine the detailed patient history, physical examination, an ECG, supine and upright blood pressure for orthostatic hypotension, Holter for arrhythmias, event monitors, we know what they are, I will show you those things. Insertable loop recorders are there. Suppose these ILRs are there, you just place it under the skin and leave it for a week or 10 days because we never know when the syncope comes or the arrhythmia comes. If you do a Holter for 24 hours, you may miss it. The ILRs can be left for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and the record can be updated. Cardiac imaging studies may be required, particularly angiography and then cardiac MRI. Special investigations in syncope or the HUT test, head up tilt test. I'll show you what it is. Hemodynamic studies for anemia and other disorders, electrophysiology for the electrolyte things, and EP mapping and ablation if there is a atrial fibrillation or an abnormal pathway in the heart. Okay. Details about syncope, what we want to ask the patient, when did it occur? Is it before the meal, when he is in the sort of prayer in the school, or when he is doing marching, or whatever is the position, or he is in crowded places. Some people in the crowded malls and markets, they get suffocated because the carbon dioxide saturation is so high that they feel relative oxygen deficiency and may have syncopal attacks. Activity, sudden neck movements, prodromal symptoms. If there an eyewitness account is there, ask them. Manner of fall, whether he gradually sunk to the ground and then whether he gradually sunk to the ground or whether he has suddenly fallen. That is also important. And then the jerky movements, bladder, tongue, post-syncopal period, all those things, history points are important. Concomitant diseases, especially cardiac diseases, pertinent family history of sudden cardiac death, cardiac disease, metabolic disorders, past medical history, neurological history, and previous syncopal history is very important. Vital signs, what do I check with the patient apart from the history? Heart rate, orthostatic blood pressure, and then look at the ECG, look at the QT interval particularly, look at the conduction defect. Echocardiography is a must for all the patients to know the LV function, to know about the valve status, and know about the left ventricular outflow. Neurological examination and carotid sinus massage test can be done, perform under clinically appropriate and supervised conditions, and monitor both ECG and blood pressure during the carotid sinus massage. So how do we do CSM? 5 to 10 seconds only. Do not occlude, just gently keep the patient in the supine and as well as in the upright on the tilt table, and then just gently massage the carotid sinus area. You know where is the carotid sinus on the carotids, and then 5 to 10 seconds, not occlusive. If it is occlusive, again brain blood supply will cut off, and then 3 to 3 second asystole or a 50 millimeter fall in the blood pressure is a positive test. So 3 seconds the heart has stopped because it's under the monitor. We know what happened, and once you remove the hand, it will resume. Contraindications are there are people who already structural heart disease, you have carotid sinus disease, and complications are of course there can be very few complications, but it is not done by general practitioners. Carotid sinus massage is done in a hospital by a cardiac physician or a senior physician. Okay, what are the other diagnostic tests? Ambulatory ECG, Holter monitoring, of course, can be ordered. Event recorder like the ILR or the intermittent versus the loop recorders. Intermittent recorders will be recording, once in half an hour. You program it, half an hour it takes ECG, and the next half an hour like that it keeps on. But sometimes that may not be useful. You use an ILR continuously. The ECG will be monitored and blood pressure also will be monitored. Head-up tilt test, HUT test, includes with provocation of nitroglycerin or isoproterenol carotid sinus massage. These insertable loop recorder, head test, head-up test, HUT test, and ATP test, adenosine triphosphate test, and EPS are beyond the realm of general practitioners. But remember, there are special investigations like HUT test, ILR, CSM, ATP injection test, and EPS test in patients whom you are suspecting structural heart disease or cardiac cause of the syncope, where the recurrent attacks of syncope are really bothersome. Okay. Now you see here 12 lead ECG only for 10 seconds it records. And then here Holter monitor, 2 days it monitors, event recorders up to 30 to 70 days, and then ILRs up to 14 months, you can leave the implantable recorder. So if you want to picturize or catch the different arrhythmias occurring erratically, so you can use an ILR also, and it's not a very complicated procedure. So this is the tilt test where protocols vary. The patient is first laid down on the supine couch, and then this couch is a tiltable couch, and he is tilted to an angle of around 60 to 80 degrees under controlled conditions, observing the blood pressure, observing the heart rate, and also the ECG, everything. So the BP is recorded before and after, and this is the head-up test. The patient is tied, of course, to the bed so that when he is standing, he may not fall with the syncope. So he is sort of bound to with the belts onto the bed, and the head-up test is done. This is available in. I used to do this when I for my patients in Cherian Heart Foundation and also in Apollo Hospital. Cherian Heart Foundation, Chennai has got this head-up tilt test, and of course, every good cardiology department like Triple M or everyone must be having that. This is very useful for looking at the postural things that are happening. I'm just canceling the video. I'll show you the video at the end. There is a small video here. And then initial evaluation history we have seen, physical examination we have seen, we thought about ECG and CSM, and that all gives you around 45% diagnosis can be made by that itself. Head-up tilt test, another 27%, external cardiac monitoring around 10%, insertable loop recorder, definitely the yield will be very high, but the cost and the time will be more. EP study is not usually required, less than 2%, 2 to 5%, and then exercise testing, usually we don't do an exercise test in a patient who has got syncope. Better preferred investigation for coronary artery disease would be an angiogram and not an exercise test, because it can suddenly precipitate a syncopal attack and the patient may fall while doing the exercise test. Generally, it is not done. EEG very rarely useful. Don't order an EEG. EEG is just to exclude any seizure disorder as a differential diagnosis. MRI, CT, brain, absolutely useless for syncope. Of course, you want to exclude neurological disorders or stroke or epilepsy, then the situation is different. But if that is not there, then there is no indication for an EEG or a CT, MRI or anything. The better test would be HUT, CSM test, and cardiac monitoring. ILRs and the EP study also may be considered. So you need to understand the difference between the seizure and the syncope. How does a seizure look like compared to syncope? So here, the onset in a seizure is sudden. That is why it's called seizure. It seizes the patient. Suddenly it comes. Whereas it is relatively gradual. Not that 1 hour or anything, 5 minutes, it will give time, prodromal symptoms, another thing. Minutes, seizure may be up to minutes, syncope only is for seconds. And frequent jerks may be there. The syncope jerks are very rare. Headache, frequent post-ictal headache or post-seizure headache is very common. The headache may be occasionally there, that too before the syncope. Confusion, very frequent. After the seizure, the patient is drowsy, confused, talk to him, he will not answer correctly. Syncope, clouding of the consciousness after the syncope is rare. Why? This is a transient global hypoperfusion. Transient cerebral global hypoperfusion. Unconsciousness may be more than 2%, maybe more than 5 minutes in a patient with seizure, but it is very short-lived. Transient loss of consciousness, less than 1 minute. Incontinence, very rare with syncope, can occur with a seizure. Eye deviation, horizontal eye deviation is very common in seizure disorder. When the patient is convulsing the eyes, both there will be horizontal, deviation of the head and eyes to one side, vertical or maybe none. And tongue biting is frequent in a seizure, cannot occur usually in syncope. Prodromes, aura of the seizure may be there. In syncope, they may have little dizziness or presyncopal symptoms. EEG often abnormal, EEG usually normal. So the clinching point is how gradual or sudden is this, how many minutes it lasted, are there jerky moments, is there incontinence, are there aura, are there post-ictal manifestations. These are the ones which separate my patient of syncope with seizure. Now, the costly tests like MRI and other things are not required for a diagnosis of syncope per se. So now, I just go by algorithmic approach. Syncope, history normal and physical normal, or history and physical abnormal. So a patient came to my chamber, I took the history, there are some certain important positive points in the history, and or there are physical findings. The possible cause is a vasodippers syncope. How do I bring it out? By doing a HUT test. Vasodippers or syncope is patient will not be able to tolerate the standing position suddenly, and then if you do the tilt test, you get a positive test for that. Okay, so this is called the vasodippers or syncope. The second one is the abnormal physical examination is there, abnormal history is there. Is there evidence of cardiac disease or cardiogenic syncope? Then you look for ECG and echo and EP mapping. And then when you have the syncope without these symptoms as well as the abnormal physical examination, then you can suspect orthostatic hypotension, review the medications, CNS abnormalities like multiple sclerosis, peripheral neuropathies like diabetic or non-diabetic polyneuropathies are the answer. So this is how we go about it. Now, differential diagnosis, these are the syncope mimics like anxiety disorders, panic attacks. Sometimes what they do is they feign syncope, and young girls and young boys, they wanted to attract attention. Suddenly they mimic as though they are falling down, but they were very careful in falling. They won't injure themselves, and that tells us that this is an action and nothing but. Then we call that as, the drama actor or cinema actor, whatever it is. Hyperventilation syndromes and drop attacks, seizures, sleep disorders, narcolepsy, cataplexy. These are a little sort of neurological things which we need not know, but just remember there are certain conditions. Hypoglycemia, as a practitioner, first thing somebody comes to think of, check the blood sugar. He got up, check the blood sugar less than 40 or less than 50, then probably you have hypoglycemia, acute alcoholic intoxication, acute bleed, trauma and concussion. History, this is what I said, concussion. And suddenly somebody bounces onto the wall or the glass panel. There will be a concussion of the brain, and that can. Hysterical fainting, I just described, vertebrobasilar insufficiency, transient ischemic attacks or differential diagnosis. Internal hemorrhage, myocardial infarction, cardiac arrhythmia, or emergencies. They have to be understood, so those patients require prompt and immediate treatment. So diagnostic challenges, what is the best diagnostic test? First of all, history and clinical, and then of course the ECG echo, and also the head tilt test, and how to exclude the idiopathic, do all the investigation. Sometimes you may find a cause. The first aid, what do I do? Immediately supine, make the patient supine, head to one side, kneel oral for a while. So what happens? Suddenly if somebody falls, what we will do? We will try to lift him onto our hands or something. Don't do that. Let him lay flat so that the cerebral circulation is restored. Immediately, fruit juice kudunga, idu kudunga, coffee kudunga, nothing. Kneel oral for a while. Cold water sprinkling on the face can be done. That stimulates the peripheral nerves and he may return to consciousness. Orthostatic hypotension, ask him to get up slowly, otherwise he will have next attack. General, cause specific, avoid postural hypotension, particularly people who are sitting in this meeting, most of them may be around 60 plus like me. And when we get up from the bed, always we should take 1 minute. And then we have to roll from the lying down position to the one side, then put the feet down first, then sit up, wait for 1 minute. During that 1 minute, you can do your prarthana, morning prarthana, whatever you wanted to do in your silent prarthana. And because the God has made you get up one more day, we never know when we will not get up after sleeping. So that would be wonderful if we have an end such so wonderfully without getting up after a night's sleep. But then, that 1 minute of time that is taken will prevent particularly the benign postural positional vertigo and also the postural hypotension. Avoid venous pooling. How do I avoid venous pooling? Activate the muscle pump. Whenever you sit, you keep on moving your feet like, as though you are doing the machine, tile machine, like the stitching machine, tiler, or moving the while walking, take a few steps after every 20 minutes, then the whatever venous pooling is there. Salt replenishing. So if you are having prolonged sitting and venous pooling, and the blood volume is pooled in the legs, so requires some salt replenishment, particularly when you go out in the hot weather and then you come back and sit for a long while, you may require salt replenishment. Drug treatments: scopolamine, disopyridine, carbamazepine, midodrine, epinephrine, antiarrhythmic drugs, EP mapping, ablation, cardiac pacing are the various treatment options. I will not exhaust all of them, but I will tell you the simple cardiac treatment. Clinical pathophysiology: neurally mediated physiological reflex mechanism. Cardio-inhibitory decreases the heart rate less than 50 beats. Vasodepressor decreases the BP less than 60. Or systolic output is a product of heart rate and the systolic volume, and the heart rate is the cardiac output. So both components are usually present. Bradycardia may be there, there may be hypotension. A combined effect is transient global cerebral hypoperfusion. Now here, the optimal treatment measures here: diet, fluid, salt, supporting treatment, and drug therapy, reviewing the medicines, and then sometimes cardiac pacing may be there, and lowering the head and lying down for a little while, and then crossing the legs. That's another important thing. Whenever we sit for a long time, though it's not good manners to cross the legs, just for a while you cross the legs and then squeeze the legs, and also the tugging the arms like this, keep the arms tucked in your like this, and then just say this activates the muscle thing. This is a simple thing that we do not do and end up in sudden getting up and this. Tilting protocol, not for us. And also pharmacological treatment. Fludrocortisone is the drug that is available. Beta-adrenergic blockers, preponderance of clinical evidence suggests minimal benefit with beta-adrenergic blockers. SSRIs may be used. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors like your doxyapine and these things, Daxid, these are available. Vasoconstrictors, epinephrine and midodrine. After them, fludrocortisone is available for the practitioners. How much I give? Fludrocortisone 100 micrograms OD in people who have low blood pressure or consistently hypotension and postural hypotension. Other drugs, midodrine and epinephrine can be given, but epinephrine as a drip only in emergencies. Midodrine 2.5 milligrams up to 10 milligrams TID can be given. So you see the midodrine, where in vasovagal syncope, people who are on midodrine, blue line, the mortality, the symptom-free, not mortality, symptom-free time is very good, whereas people who are not given that, the symptom-free time will be comparatively less. So carotid sinus syncope, it is mainly carotid sinus hypersensitivity. No symptoms will be there, no specific treatment. And here again, avoiding the falls and explaining the syncope. So CSS, carotid sinus sensitive, it is a sensory nerve endings to the carotid sinus walls respond to deformation, and deafferentation of the neck muscles may contribute, and increase the afferent signals to the brainstem, reflex increase in the efferent vagal activity, and reduction in the heart, diminution of the sympathetic tone, that is vasodilatation, results in bradycardia, sympathetic is less, hypotension, parasympathetic tone causes parasympathetic is essential for the heart rate. Bradycardia and vasodilatation together will produce fall of blood pressure more than 50 millimeters, and it lasts for about more than 3 seconds. So orthostatic hypotension, most important, diuretic use, vasodilator use, beta blockers, clonidine, hydralazine, and alpha blockers, not beta blockers, alpha blockers, vasodilator drugs, CCBs, diuretics, clonidine, hydralazine. Primary autonomic failure occurs in multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. This is called the POTS syndrome. Whenever they stand up, the heart rate goes up. This is called the postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. You may ask me if the tachycardia rate may be good. No, the tachycardia will be 120, 130. The cardiac filling will be less. So much stroke volume will come down. Secondary autonomic failure occurs in amyloid, alcoholism, diabetes, adrenal insufficiency, steroid, sudden steroid withdrawal. There is an internal bleeding also. 5 minutes of supine position, standing for 3 minutes, drop in blood pressure more than 20 millimeters. This is what I told you as the postural hypotension. Symptoms may be there, may not be there. You have to record the blood pressure. So give the rest for the patient first. In the resting position, you just record the blood pressure, keep him in supine position for 5 minutes, then make him stand, now not for half a minute, but for 3 clear minutes. And of course, he will be holding the table or something during that period and record the blood pressure at the end of 3 minutes. A drop of more than 20 millimeters and systolic blood pressure only you have to take, and that is more than drop 20 millimeters is positive for postural hypotension. So treatment strategies for postural hypotension: adequate hydration, patient education, avoiding falls, fluid, salt intake, diet, hot baths, minimize caffeine and alcohol. Caffeine is a vasodilator and tachycardia also. Sleeping with head on the bed, head under the bed, elevated, sometimes, tilt training, leg crossing, arm pulling, support hose, drug therapies with fludrocortisone, midodrine, and then erythropoietin in the perimia is there. Tachypacing, probably not very useful. And of course, these drugs I have already given, available as brand name Efortil is the epinephrine, and then the proamantine or Vorvatin or the midodrine, and Fluoricart, very easily available for you, 100 micrograms fludrocortisone. So cardiac syncope, of course, the cardiac causes have to be ascertained, and you have to refer to the cardiology, particularly myocardial ischemia, aortic stenosis, obstructive outflow tract due to hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy. Assess the culprit arrhythmia and treat the arrhythmia promptly. And then you have syncope due to structural cardiovascular diseases, acute MI, pulmonary embolism, pulmonary hypertension, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, valvular abnormalities, and aortic dissection. These are beyond the scope of general practitioner. Syncope due to cardiac arrhythmias, bradyarrhythmias more problematic than tachyarrhythmias. One has to be very careful about. Due to tachyarrhythmias, of course, treat the underlying arrhythmia like AVNRT, AVRT, that is atrioventricular reentrant tachycardia, atrioventricular non-reentrant tachycardia, and then the atrial fibrillation, atrial flutter, ventricular arrhythmias, ventricular tachycardia. Torsade de Pontis is withdraw the offending drug. Usually it is due to long QT or Brugada or short QT with an offending drug there. Torsade de Pontis is a very dangerous arrhythmia. So we have to tackle it immediately. I'll show you the ECG of Torsade de Pontis. Drug therapy may be an alternative in many cases. So this is the ventricular tachycardia there on the top, and then like the streamer that you do in the party, with the twisting. The ECG looks like a streamer. There will be beats with good power, and there will be very few beats, and some beats will be with the lower cardiac contractility. And this is a very polymorphous ventricular tachycardia on the top with the Torsade de Pontis, which is a life-threatening arrhythmia. And then QT interval, you all must be knowing what is QT interval. There is a PQRST, ECG is there, Q wave is there, T wave is there. The interval between Q and T is called the QT interval. Normally, it should be less than half of the RR interval. RR interval is the cardiac cycle. What is the cardiac cycle? 0.8 seconds. So half of that is 0.4. So if it is less than half of the cardiac cycle, then it is not. So if the cardiac cycle is shortened, let us say 0.6 seconds, that is 100 heart rate, then QT interval should be 0.3, half of 0.6. So you have to use the corrected QT interval divided by root of R minus RR, that is RR interval, is the corrected QT interval. Maximum it can go up to is 0.44. When you say prolonged, it is more than 0.44 or more than half the RR interval. So this is the long QT interval. This one you can see in this ECG that the Q wave is somewhere and the end of T wave you see anyway somewhere, and a very long prolonged QT interval. This is normally ignored by the practitioners. When you see the ECG, particularly in elderly people, look for the QT interval. Certain drugs you cannot prescribe if the QT interval is prolonged. Okay, and that is the Q wave starting, and you see that is the T wave ending, and that interval is here in this case is 0.56 seconds. Normal up to half of the RR interval or 0.4 seconds. 0.8 is the cardiac cycle. 0.4 is the QT interval. Upper limit 0.44. For our purposes as practitioners, 0.4 itself you have to suspect that it is a long QT interval. So rule of thumb, half of the cardiac RR interval, half of it is prolonged. Then long QT syndrome is, of course, Torsades de Pointes I have covered, and these are a little more cardiology oriented. This one's Brugada syndrome is important. There will be prolonged PR interval. Our right bundle branch work will be there. ST segment will be elevated. This looks like myocardial infarction, but not somebody who sees the ECG, they may think it is anteroseptal myocardial infarction or septal myocardial infarction. It is not. It is a Brugada syndrome is a conduction abnormality. Genetic usually occurs in males. And then insertable cardiac loop, in that between the first rib and the fourth rib, a triangular area is chosen under the skin and the loop recorder is inserted and the leads are connected to the heart, and this records the something like that will be the recorder, and that is there in the patient's body inside, and that records the information. This is called Reveal Plus. The brand name of that is Reveal Plus, and it is put in the computer, and you will see the arrhythmia and other things. This is the ILR recordings. You can program it. 83-year-old woman, the syncope due to bradycardia, pacemaker is implanted. 28-year-old man presents with ER multiple times after falls and resulting trauma. Ventricular tachycardia is diagnosed by the ILR, ablated, medicated, become normal. So conventional EP testing for arrhythmias to electrical pathway testing. This is available in Chennai in 3 or 4 centers, and particularly Dr. K.M. Cherry Hospital, also in Apollo and in Global Hospital. Also, majority of my patients have been investigated for EP mapping. Hospitalization is recommended when you suspect a cardiac disease. And then the prognostic predictors, which patient of mine will do well. This I would like to know. Excellent prognosis, age less than 45, normal ECG, neural cause or psychiatric cause, excellent prognosis. Poor prognosis, age more than 45, abnormal ECG, recurrent attacks, sudden heart disease, structural heart disease, and arrhythmia present, poor prognosis. This green and red you can easily separate and refer only those people who have the red zone, like those who are 45, recurrent attacks, abnormal ECG, and then sudden structural heart disease or arrhythmias. So the syncope scoring is there, San Francisco syncope scoring. This is called the CHEST, CHES, CHEST. CHF is there, hematocrit less than 30, ECG abnormality, shortness of breath, systolic blood pressure less than 90, CHESS. Easily you can assess. Is there evidence of heart failure? What is the hematocrit like? That is PCV less than 30, ECG abnormality is there, shortness of breath is there, systolic blood pressure less than 90. The patient is in a condition to be admitted. Myth, every syncope patient should be admitted. No, it depends upon the cause and underlying etiology. Every syncope patient requires to rule out MI, not always, because MI is not the only cause of syncope. Telemetry improves outcomes, certainly in people who have. So CME doctors are our strength, and thank you all very much. And exactly we used 55 minutes. And I thank Dr. Kailash and Dr. Girija Ramamurthy and Dr. Ramamurthy for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. I welcome any questions if you have any.